So I'm Tim. I'm the creative partner at Rehab. We, we're a creative technology company. We basically work in the field of media advertising. We started with a bunch of software development people, designers, creatives, and over the years we've evolved into doing advertising. I didn't go through advertising myself. It took me a while to figure out the difference between a media company and an advertising agency whenever I was doing it. But the studio creates hacks for a lot of Google work, Disney, and today we're going to talk about hacking everything. Whenever I was growing up, there was one pretty prolific hacker that I saw every Saturday afternoon. And you might know him as BA.
Great.
Where's my car?
Isn't it beautiful?
Lady, couple boats, fresh paint, it'd be good as new.
How do I get into these things?
So it always amazed me that BA was able to make tanks out of toothpicks and rocket launchers out of bottles. And I guess sort of our inspiration for the talk. If we look at hackers, we really think of them as a different type of problem solver, right? They basically take shortcuts. They approach it from a lot of different angles to try to get to their goal. And really, you want to be able to focus in different ways. And so if we look at some of the principles that hackers use, so focusing on the solution. So really having a very, very clear vision of what you're trying to fix or hack or attack. And I think that whenever creatives try to approach this, they focus on what they want to make, not what it's going to achieve. And I think that's a different mentality. Having the focus really helps you to get into that. Assess the network, really breaking down the entire ecosystem around the problem and trying to figure out how to use different elements to actually get through. So for example, looking at ecosystems of servers and checking networks for vulnerabilities, if you take that mentality and apply that later on, it gets some interesting results. Experimenting and building, I mean, that's really, this is what you have to do. It's like you're always building, you're always hacking, you're building components, you're building pieces of code, you're having ideas that you can then use later. So you're building up a code depository, idea base that you can then you can use. And proving and testing. I mean, hackers won't wait until the end to prove that it works. They'll do it every single time they do something. So really about testing, validating is really important as you go through this process. And we always look at it like it's much better to know you've got a bad idea than day one rather than day 200 in terms of proving the concept and validating it. And then finally, really being open and transparent, so really about sharing ideas, code, sharing information so that others can build upon your work. I think you'll find a lot of the time we're actually taking ideas and concepts from other people, and then we want to kind of bring that back. So in terms of the way that we were looking at the company, we weren't massively happy with the work we did last year, so we wanted to look at it and apply hacking to that creative process and see what comes out of it. So it was really about how to create better, faster, more effective work. And I think a lot of people have tackled the business model, but we wanted to apply it to the creative process. It's that kind of black box enigma, and see if we can apply technology into the creative process. And we've created this process. It's called Triage. I wanted to share it with you. Hopefully, you'll take it with you, use it, and maybe share it back with us and see what kind of results we get. So here's just a few principles that we're building into. Firstly, creativity lives within constraints. I mean, I think this is really well proven. But the way that we approach this is we approach the work in sprints. So a sprint is a 1-week time box. On a Monday, we're very focused on what we have to do for Friday. And each day, the creatives will have to tackle ideas and concepts around an insight or a piece of technology. And we really force them to kind of put a lot of ideas down. And so they're sort of quite low fidelity ideas, so maybe a sketch, maybe a reference. And they really are focused on getting like 15, 20 ideas a day down through this process. That is easier to work in because everyone knows what's expected of you. And you find that after all of that, we can then use other pieces of technology to kind of help us to get different insights. So what we might do is look at a comedian and look at maybe a script from a comedian to try to find some insights that they've used. So we can actually use those and concept against those insights through the process. Quantity over quality. We really focus on getting like a broad set of ideas out because what we want to do later on, which we'll talk about, is testing those ideas and getting those out into the world. And so it can be quite difficult to get a creative to sort of focus in on one day, a shorter period of time. And so to get over this, we say done is better than perfect, and perfect it once it's done. So this is really about getting ideas to a finished state, a sort of very unfinished state really quickly, so that we can then use that and test those as we kind of proceed through the process. So we want to use things like prototypes. I'm sure you guys have heard a lot about prototypes over the past 2 years. Really, they can be anything from a video to a piece of clickable code. But what we're using is a lot of tools that actually helps our designers and creatives actually build clickable experiences, because in digital, it's very difficult to explain the idea through traditional means of maybe a comp or a storyboard. And you actually have to experience the user journey, so you start to get the emotion in the idea. And so the prototypes help us build experiences very quickly that people can test with. Yeah, I mean, that's really about communicating the idea. In terms of being effective, I think it's very difficult for you to say, I have the one idea that's going to crack this brief. And what we focus on is selling to customers, not to clients. So we're going to take these prototypes, we're going to take the prototypes, we're going to get them in front of users. So we use a lot of Google Hangouts, we're doing video chats, and we're seeing how real people, which is weird, but people who are not connected with the brand actually using the work and then getting their feedback and then feeding that back into the design process. Similarly, we use a lot of media testing, so we're testing ideas through banner buys or Facebook ads to kind of see which ones are more effective. And then finally, open for all to see. So we really have an approach of not doing presentations. So we don't have everyone in the office until midnight getting ready for the presentation the next day. All of the work is on a shared Google Doc so that everyone works into the same document and all of the stakeholders actually have access to this document. So there's no time wasted in trying to, again, sell the idea to the client. You've used your insights, you've talked to your customers, and you actually have more validated ideas to then go ahead into production with. So that's a quick summary, really, of how we're using the hack mentality in the process. So giving you constraints, time boxing, and very clear goals. The idea of getting a lot of ideas on the table so we can test those. So it's about lower fidelity ideas. Done is better than perfect. Perfect it once it's done. So that's about getting an idea to 80% rather than 100% polish, really. And again, a lot of that is about being able to test and refine and edit later. Prototypes and presentations, again, not trying to sell the work, but giving people tools to actually play with the ideas. The insight and the research, using real people rather than what we think or what we think in a room is a lot more effective. And then finally open for all to see. So I think this is what we're doing. It's not finished, but again, looking at different ways to approach creative problems, I think it's really interesting. So it would be great if you guys could go experiment, do some stuff, and if there was any questions, we could do those.
Yes. So using this methodology,
Thank you.
using this approach,
Are there any? Do you have a practical example? For example, there's did any of the stuff that's here at this exhibit
Mm-hmm.
come out of this? And can you give
Yeah.
a few examples?
Yeah, so there's a lot of projects that are actually in the process, so they haven't gone to production yet. But we, for Disney, we created a campaign for Valentine's Day that again was concepted in 3 weeks, using the process, tested, and then into production and launched. I don't know what else I can talk about, but there's a lot of stuff that's about to launch. But yeah, again, the process evolves as we go. So we're in about project 14 using the methodology, and we're going to tweak and redo that.
what's the scope? Are you from Google?
No,
Your agency uses
we're a creative technology company, so we use technology in our creative thinking and producing campaigns and products. So.
Any other questions?
There we go.
I mean, maybe it doesn't relate to you, but I was just thinking of flipping what you said. You're using hacking in advertising, and I was thinking using advertising for hacking. It may sound odd, but you use the word storyboards, and when people build mobile apps, right? Maybe that's really a hacking approach. Then using storyboards turns out to be a really good way of getting good design into the app. So it's really taking that approach and then applying it to hacking. And I don't know if you thought about that. It was just a funny thought that I had.
Yeah, the prototypes are the new storyboard, right? It's a way for you can very quickly hand someone a computer or a phone and go, here's the idea, you can play with it. So it's got animation and it feels like it's real. And that's a much better way to communicate the idea than through traditional storyboards. It's very hard to put it all together. Like we said, the stories in the user journey. So as a user interacts with the piece of advertising or product, that journey is actually how we're creating the emotion with the user and the customer. So, thanks.
Are there any other questions? Okay, well, thank you very much. Tim Rodgers from Rehabstudio.
Thank you. Thanks.